janefinch.com.
To get started, I know people are going to trickle in, and that's fine. But if everyone can find a seat, and we want to start so that people can definitely get to ask their questions. And once again, I'll just quickly go over that the washroom is on the right side. Once you go through the hallway, you'll see a sign that says washroom. There's water and refreshments in the hallway, close to where you signed in. And also we have childcare. Just let us know if you need childcare. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna Kay. So tonight is gonna be Anna Kay and myself, Letitia Diawo, who will be moderating the all candidates debate. Before you walked in, I don't know if you saw the mock voting that was set up outside. It's really important. We're trying to see where people are at in terms of who they hope to vote for before they came for the town hall, and then also at the end to go back and actually take a vote to see if anything any of the candidates said sort of swayed or changed sort of who you're going to vote for. So don't forget to do that. If you didn't get a chance to do that, it's just right at the entrance of the health center. Okay, thank you.
And just to let everyone know just a little bit of who, the folks who organized tonight's town hall. So it is the Jane and Finch Toronto Strong Neighborhood Strategy Task Force that consists of community-based organizations, grassroots groups, and residents of the Jane and Finch area that have been active since 2014. And we're gonna go over just some quick ground rules just for tonight, just so we can have things run smoothly. So first and foremost, like no heckling time. There's 90 seconds, so a minute and 30 seconds to answer all questions. This is to the candidates. And also, there are lots of concerns and issues. We want a diverse of questions and lived experience to be shared as many as possible by the residents. So please be mindful of others when you're just asking your questions, just on time. Also, this event is being live streamed on Facebook. It's a public event, so pictures and it will be filming. Childcare and refreshments are provided, as I stated before. Thank you.
Yeah, so, you know, we want to have a really productive session today. And we're really asking, again, like Anna Kay mentioned, keep your questions very clear and straight to the point. You know, we're trying to get, of course, to as many people as possible. The room is quite small and it can be pretty loud. So if you can put your phones on silent, that would be greatly appreciated. So we wanted to start the day with some questions from the task force. So the first question that we have is, in 1989...
Sorry, Letitia, they're gonna do the introduction first of themselves and who they are.
Of course, that's very important.
And you have...
We can assume. Yeah,
Yes.
We did ours. We can assume. I'm just ready to get in, you know?
Yes.
Okay, so we are gonna give everyone a minute to introduce yourself. So if it's okay to start from here.
Hello, as everybody can hear me, I guess you can. My name is Christine Nugent, and I am the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada candidate in this riding. Our party is going to have its 50th anniversary next year. I ran in this riding in 1974. I ran in this riding in 2015. There are 25 federal political parties. So I think it's important for you to know that there's an awful lot of political parties that don't have a voice. Thank you very much to the organizers of this event for allowing our voice. And I would also like to say thank you for having a community-based type of event. Want to hear, we should be listening as candidates to what the people have to say, so I appreciate that. Finally, I'd like to say that I entered into the election this time because of the death of the Iftikhar food workers, because I'm active in the injured worker movement in Ontario, and I had no idea there'd be a fifth worker killed during the elections. So thank you very much, and I think my time is up now.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria Augimeri and I'm the NDP candidate. It's wonderful to be here this evening. I used to be the city councillor for this area in a different configuration of a ward, and it's always nice to be around my former constituents. People who know me know that I'm a community fighter and a community builder. I worked hard to get the subway up here, as you know. I worked hard to get the Finch LRT to be reinstated into this community, and as the chair of the Conservation Authority, I worked hard to get the new building that we're getting on Shoreham Drive in this community. I've worn many hats over my 30-odd years in politics, including chair of the Conservation Authority, chair of the TTC, and those who know me know that I'm an advocate for social justice. I fight on behalf of the least fortunate, and in this community there's a lot of visible and invisible poverty that needs desperately to be addressed. Most important of all is food security. I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike Schmitz, the candidate for the Green Party. I want to thank everyone for having this on. I love this area. So about me, I'm 40 years old, I'm a dad, I have 2 kids. I share custody of my son with his mom. My daughter stays with me and my family, we work it all out. I grew up in a low-income family in the West End. I went to Humber Crest, then York Humber. I'm George Brown, like I'm a Toronto guy. I started actively advocating things in grade 7 when I staged a rally against the litter in the Humber River, and that kind of woke up an advocate in me. And since then, I've been pretty much big and loud about everything I perceived as unjust or unfair. And if we're going to be honest, in Toronto, that's a lot of things. So the Green Platform really tackles everything that I've been hollering about all these years, from like education, from poverty, social injustice, environmental things. Their platform covers all those things. And with everything that's been going on right now, the way everything is, we just need someone to step forward to do that, and that's why I'm with the Green Party right now. Thanks.
Thank you. So we just want to let everyone know in this room that we had invited all the candidates, and last minute, Judy Sgro let us know within like 30 minutes before the event started that she will not be attending. We're not quite sure what happened to the other gentleman, but invitation was extended to everyone, to all the party candidates. So we just want to make that clear. So, and these are the 3 candidates that showed up tonight. So we're going to open it up to the community so they can start asking questions. So we have 2 mics, 1 mic I should say on both, or 2 mics, 1 on each side. So feel free to get up and ask questions. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roshni. I'm working within the community. Just one question. You've seen a rise, sorry, I'm too tall for this. So we see a rise in a lot of racism and anti-immigration issues are happening specifically in areas of low income, in particular Jane and Finch. And this has been an ongoing issue that the community has been facing. Well, there's been an increase of shootings that are happening or very bad food insecurities in racialized and marginalized communities like Jane and Finch. How are you going to help impact these communities, and how are you going to help in diminishing this idea of anti-immigration and racism that's happening in the communities here and actually take a stand on it? How are you going to do that?
Would any one of the candidates can start, and then you'll have a minute and a half to answer the question and just pass it along to the other person. Thank you.
Our party believes that racism is state organized, and the history of Canada as a state has been to organize society in such a way that immigrants the Indigenous community are marginalized, denied rights, and this is reflected. So you have to look at the root causes of these, of the issue of racism, and unless you look at the role of the state and what role it plays, that is a discussion we have to open up.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very complex issue, and it has measures that can be dealt with, but these measures are very, very involved with how the community was built up. This community was built up with many housing projects that are inward looking. They were designed to keep people in. They were designed along racially motivated lines. They were designed to be places where communities of color would be able to be together without the proper social safety net. We have to look at the design, and we have to tear down a lot of what was built and rebuild it in a humane way. People cannot live like this. People should not live in inhumane conditions. I grew up in social housing. I know what it means. And this is not what we came to Canada for, at least my family. We need to look at the great injustice that has been done to this community in the housing sector, and we need to rebuild it brick by brick. Barry's telling me I have a few seconds left. I've spent the better part of 30 years fighting against housing because I know that it's wrong, and I know that people live in terrible conditions here. So I feel that a lot of the de-education and de-employment in this community is due to the de-housing, and this is something that is number one on my to-do list, to fix it.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. You know, dealing with racism is hard because, like, even talking about it, it makes people uncomfortable and angry. And I was lucky enough to grow up around here, so I grew up immersed in diversity, right? Like, I grew that. So, like, I don't understand racist people. I don't know where they're coming from, and I really have a hard time dealing with that. But personally, I think it's rooted in ignorance, and I feel people that are doing that, instead of attacking them, we need to enlighten them, right? We need to teach them better, right? No one's born racist, but the problem is federally, systematically, like, we need to call out the existence of very clear discriminatory policies the government has. Like, if you look at the treatment of the Indigenous people right now, there is a current decision being made not to let these people have water, right? And that's a good decision our government's making, right? Equality, it's a simple concept that can be taught by anyone, and I think that's what we need to do, starting with the government, though. We just have to start talking about it, we gotta have these awkward conversations with everyone. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna read out the question from the task force from the beginning that I started. So in 1989, members of parliament passed a resolution to end poverty by the year 2000. 30 years later, 1 in 5 children lives in poverty. And Humber River-Black Creek has the highest rate of child and family poverty in Toronto. Are you committed to end child and family poverty? If yes, how would you do that given the current disappointing records? So anyone can start.
Thank you. Absolutely, you're right. And this community also has one of the highest rates of adolescents who have really not plugged into the system and feel alienated from the system and feel that the system is not working, not on their side. And they're right. I think that the NDP's plan to bring in pharmacare for all and Dentacare for all will help stem the tide of poverty. About half of Canadians are $200 away from bankruptcy, from insolvency. Most Canadians don't feel that they will do as well as their parents did. We want to bring Dentacare, full Dentacare, to the 4 million Canadians who need it. That starts to address the problems and the challenges that people face in poverty today. I think that what this government has done, and the Liberals have been promising to end child poverty every 5 years or so. They've been promising to institute a Childcare, a universal childcare program every 5 years or so. Every election that comes around, they promise. They just don't follow through with their promises. And they certainly haven't followed through with their promises for this community. So I think that through housing incentives and total housing rebuilds, the one at Fergrove, for example, there's no federal money in that. We need to have the feds at the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Either Mike or Christine can go.
I think I understand your signs now. I get a minute and 30. Yeah, I sure cut off the last time, so I'm going to try and maybe catch an extra 30 here. Okay. So on the issue of child poverty, I think one of the, they're right. It's been going on and on and on, the promises. It's not materializing, but one thing that we could do for child poverty and for women is to ensure that there's full funding for childcare subsidies. So in Toronto, we have 17,000 on a waiting list. And so a simple funding of subsidies is going to allow people to go to work and be able to participate in society, contribute to society, without having the worry of high costs of childcare. So that's the first thing I would like to say. The second thing that isn't being said is that social programs are being cut all across the country in provinces and federally. You can't pay the rich and cut social programs and expect to solve the issue of child poverty. So we have to stop paying the rich, stop giving handouts to monopolies and oligopolies, and we have to increase the funding for social programs, and that will facilitate an end to poverty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Poverty has been an issue political parties have been paying lip service to for years, spending billions of dollars on silly programs that just don't work. The Green Party has a program, it's called a Guaranteed Livable Income, and I don't want to mess this up, so I'm going to check my notes here. And so basically it's going to eliminate poverty overnight. So it provide a regular payment to every Canadian to making sure that they're at a level above the poverty line to meet Canadians' basic food, shelter, and housing needs, and other needs, to make sure, so what's necessary for health and dignity, just the basics. The principle of guaranteed livable income is simple. Once a person's basic needs are met, they can focus on thriving, doing things like going back to school, getting a better job, sending their kids to STEM camp, putting money back into the economy. Because if you know that if you give someone that doesn't have a lot of money $1,000, they're going to put that right back into the economy, buying groceries, buying food, putting their kids in programs and things like that. But the government's been giving millionaires millions of dollars, and when you give a millionaire $1,000, he puts that money right in the bank, and that money's dead money to the economy from there on. So the government, instead of putting money into the taxpayers' pockets, is putting it into the corporations' pockets and just killing our economy's money when it could be going to us. So that's how we'd eliminate poverty pretty much overnight, by bringing everyone in Canada up to a guaranteed livable income.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. So we're going to go to the audience. Again, the mics are here, so if you're ready with your question, you can line up, and then we will take it on a first-come, first-served basis. And again, if you can please help us by keeping the noise in the back to a minimum, because it does carry to the front. Thanks again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne. I'm a member of the community and a member of Jane Finch Action Against Poverty. As you know, this is a racialized community with lots of immigrants, lots of people coming to Canada for migrant work. The federal government has made it somewhat impossible for other countries and their economies to survive, so have to come to Canada to work on farms, work in temp agencies, work in undesirable workplaces with little to no rights. So I'm wondering what you all plan on doing to support migrant workers, specifically in granting them a permanent status on arrival and a federal worker program plan, or the occupation. So currently, will you be working towards the creation of open or occupation permits that are not reliant on employers, that would allow workers to move freely between jobs and workplaces from any employment or any sector? So currently when they come to Canada, they have to stay in one sector of employment and are not able to move between sectors. Will you be working towards the extension, then grandparenting of the interim pathway for care workers to ensure that no worker is left behind? And the immediate implementation of an open work permit program for workers facing the risk of abuse and or being abused. We know that on many of the farms, workers are living in inhumane conditions. Often they get their passports and documentations taken away. These are some of the issues that Black Creek Food Justice Network is working on, and we are wondering what your plan is.
All right, thank you so much.
Hi there. I think migrant workers in Canada and workers in Canada deserve the same rights. That's just how it is. Like, if you're working here, you deserve to be protected by the Ministry of Labor. The trouble is, our Ministry of Labor is not protecting the workers. I work just down the street from Fiera Foods. I'm the health and safety guy for VersaCold. So every time a worker at Fiera dies, we hear about it, and we hear how they leave the factory running open for the day. It's disgusting. The fact that a Ministry of Labor is not protecting its workers is deplorable. So if I were as MP, like, we change that. We'd make an actual Ministry of Labor that goes in and checks to see what's happening, make sure that workers are being taken care of, make sure they're being covered, make sure they're not being forced into a job where they can't switch for the whole time they're here, because that's not fair. You have to, it closes doors. In Canada, coming to Canada to work is all about opening doors.
Thank you. I followed what happened at Fiera Foods, and it was a deplorable situation, and it was one that could have been avoided if the federal and provincial governments both had had some insight in their cabinets, in their respective cabinets, about worker rights. Health and safety has far to go. If you'll remember, even during the building of the subway at York University, we had a company that whose health and safety record was spotty. In fact, one worker died on the job, another had her arm broken, another man had his legs broken, etc. What is happening is that temporary workers fill that gap. What the Liberals have said federally is that we should take the temporary jobs as being the new normal. I don't agree. I think that federal legislation and provincial legislation must be strengthened. And I think that we need the ability for governments to call an inquiry with teeth into what happened at Fiera Foods. They should not be allowed to get away with murder, and they've done that 5 times.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question and your elaboration on the issue of migrant workers. I think that we have all kinds of really active and informative and knowledgeable people and organizations in this riding who know best what should be done. What's happening in the federal election is they aren't talking about these things. We're talking about them here, and it's really progressive to be able to do that. The fact that the migrant workers don't have status in this country has been an issue for a long time, and it's not because we don't know about it. It's because the government has an open for business outlook. Everything is run on the basis of what's in the interest for business, not just in Ontario, but across the country. And so the compensation systems deny workers their rights. Health and safety laws are there, they're not enforced. We have a national law that says kill a worker, you go to jail, you get charged. It's not being used for the last 20 years. So the fact that an open for business outlook is the mover and shaker of the country, that's the problem.
Thank you so much. I'm going to invite folks who are standing in the back. We have actually a few seats in the front. Don't be shy, and I promise you, you won't be on camera, because that's what someone said to me. They don't want to be on camera.
Yes.
So please move forward.
Yes.
I'm just going to give folks a minute to sit down, and then we're going to take the next question.
Yes. Also, guys, there's also another microphone on this side. So anyone on this side, if you want to ask any questions, there's one right over here also, okay?
One more thing, Butterfly, if you can hold the cue card up. So if you're not comfortable asking questions, you can get a cue card from Butterfly, write your question on it, and then we will get somebody on the mic to ask the question for you. Okay? So we're going to go to you. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jai. I live in the Jane Finch area. It's very fine and nice to be addressing concerns around poverty, which is, of course, so important for families to have hope. And I'd like to know, though, why we're being treated as secondary citizens, and I'll tell you what I mean. We've had cars racing on the Jane and Shoreham all summer for hours at an end. So how come that's going on and nobody's doing anything about it? The other thing is the Jane bus, and the Jane bus system is terrible. I can give you examples of incredibly bizarre happenings, and it's very strange to me. So, yeah, we want to, help with money, but we also want to be treated as equal citizens with respect for our quiet, and people have to get to school, the children have to get to school, and people get to work. We're on the bus system. So how are you addressing those issues?
Thank you so much. So any one of you can start.
Is this on? Those are not federal issues, sir, but your counselor is here present. Anthony, where are you? There he is. Anthony Pruitt, so if you'd like to address him, those are both municipal issues.
Thanks. Do we have anybody else on the mic? Oh.
I was going to say, I know even though they're both municipal issues, I think they should be looked at federally. We should look at how a city like Burlington, with a population of this riding, has 4 or 5 really beautiful rec centers, and we don't. We should look why the roads are better than our roads. We should look at things like that from a federal level. We should figure out why most of the workers for the GTA are in this one area and they're not being treated good. That is an issue that everyone needs to look at and not just just on someone else.
Thank you for your question, sir. I'd like to address this issue of saying whether something's municipal, provincial, or federal. So what I'd like to introduce is that we have rights by virtue of being human beings. And so the right to transportation, the right to peace, these are national issues. If you are a human, that you should have your rights ensured. So the amount of money that goes from the federal government to transportation, our tax dollars, lines the pockets of the rich corporations who deliver that transportation. You don't have a voice there. So the issue becomes, that your voice should be heard, that there should be a place that your voice is heard. So all these questions are so crucial to the community and to people. And yet your voices are not heard. They're heard in this room, thank goodness for that. But in this federal election, these discussions are not taking place. There's a lot of battering going on, but not the key issues that people are really facing. So I carry on using your voice.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, so I am also a resident of the area. I work in the area, and I am a youth in the area as well. And so Humber River-Black Creek, this riding, this ward, has the highest number of families waiting for subsidized housing. So this question is around housing. There is a lack of affordable housing, there is rising rents, and there is housing costs, stagnating incomes, and limited access to subsidized housing. And that's a major issue that residents face in this area, families, individuals, and whatnot. So my question to the candidates is, what is your plan to help with creating more affordable and accessible housing? Do you have a national strategy? And if so, what is it? And how do you plan on funding the national housing strategy? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the issue of housing from the point of view, once again, that it's a right as a human being. So if we look at it as a right, they have to find a way to fund it if it's insured because you're human. So the fight for rights is the fight for the programs that ensure that those rights are realized. So that's the outlook. So if we look at funding, which seems to be the deficit, all of these, I mean, if the Conservatives were here, and I'm sure the Liberals live that way, we're still not sure of the other parties, but deficit and debt is the driver, right? So we spend $26 billion on the defense budget. We buy Navy ships, but we don't have housing. How come that's not being discussed in this federal election? And here we are, just a few days away. So I thank you for raising the issue and to carry on in your work as a youth, in your organizations, to advocate for this, for those rights. Because without the organizations on the ground organizing for social justice, it's not going to happen from these cartel political parties. They represent the rich. And so you're doing what needs to be done. Carry on, and we support that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The NDP announced a new deal for people, and this new deal will make a definite impact, and I think it's one of the most important things in the planks in the platform. 500,000 quality, affordable homes across the country to start. Immediate relief for renters, for tenants who need help now, with a rental benefit of up to $5,000 a year. Reintroduction of a 30-year mortgage, especially for first-time home buyers, and a foreign buyer's tax to crack down on speculation, which is driving up the housing market in places like Vancouver and Toronto especially. What we found now, you asked about funding, how to fund it. What we found now is the Liberals have given away about $14 billion in tax giveaways to large corporations and multinationals for their private jets and limousines. We would use that money instead to where it would make the most impact for children, for families, and that is at the roof level. I think that the plan is realistic, and I think that it's a start, and it's definitely not going to be the entire solution, but it's a start.
Thank you.
You'd be surprised to see how many empty places there are in Toronto right now. Right now, almost 40% of the condos aren't even owner-occupied. They're either vacant or being rented out to us at like twice the price that it cost to mortgage them. So how that happened is, well, our government let that happen to us. They let people come in and scoop up tons, hundreds of condos and houses that were meant for us, and then rent them back to us at twice the price. So what we do is we'd make housing a human right, like it should be. Like everyone needs a place to sleep. And we'd appoint a minister of housing to strengthen a national housing strategy. And we'd increase housing investment and rent assistance, fund nonprofit housing cooperatives and organizations for seniors and people with special needs and low-income families. And we'd also restore tax incentives for purpose-built housing. And once again, this is another thing that's usually municipal, federal. We'd work between the levels of government to make sure that everyone has it, because in Canada, everyone should have a safe place to call home.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see each and every one of you out here. But I have a problem and I need to get it solved. My problem is, Christabel more senior live in poverty as Canada pension plan. And old age security are not sufficient to cover all expense. People very hardworking, people have made, many people does have private pension plan and it's become a very hard saving through RRSP. And other means, due to skyrocketing cost of living, that is your party, entertainment, income security plan for the current and future senior.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question. As I said at the beginning, the NDP's Pharmacare and Dentacare program is definitely going to help with making ends meet for seniors. However, you asked a specific question about boosting pensions, and yes, we're on the same page on that one. I think that private pensions need to be protected as well. For example, you'll all remember what happened with the Sears company when it closed. The workers had over $700 million of their pension money taken away from them. But you have to think about why the government has decided not to enter the housing market and why the federal government has not stepped in to provide 1 penny of the housing for seniors that you need. At the provincial level, they got out of providing civic housing when Mike Harris, the Conservative Premier, was there. Before that, there was funding for affordable housing. There was funding to build affordable complexes. There isn't now. So Ontario remains the only place in the world where the municipality is supposed to pick up the cost of providing housing and providing public transit. It's wrong. The federal government hasn't stepped in to help Ontarians, and that's wrong as well. They're out of the housing market. They need to be awakened.
Thank you.
I agree that we currently don't treat our seniors very well. My grandmother's in a home right now, and she deserves so much better than what we can afford, what anyone can afford to put her in. It's terrible the way the government treats the people that built this country. I don't agree with it. But I don't know so much about policy, so I'm going to read a lot from notes here because I don't know a lot of it. But I know that one of the things that I like about the Green Party is their guaranteed livable income, the pharmacare, public transportation are things that they're pushing forward. They want to push forward home retrofits and affordable housing. They also want to develop a national senior strategy with the following priorities. They want to ensure the Canada Pension Plan remains robust and adaptive to changing needs and circumstances by increasing over time the target to replacement rate from 25% to 50% of income during working years. They want to support innovative home sharing plans and other measures to allow people to stay in their own homes as long as possible. We're going to create more long-term care beds in neighborhood facilities. We're going to protect pensions, like the NDP, by amending the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act and Credit Companies Creditors Arrangement Act to establish the permanence of pensioners. So when a company closes its doors, your pension will be safe. And in collaboration with health professionals, provincial territorial governments, we want to develop a national dementia strategy because within 25 years, the number of Canadians living with a form of dementia could reach 1.3 million, and that's something that needs to be looked at because I don't know if you've seen anyone that has dementia. It's really impactful, And we can't let what happens to some people with dementia happen to people with dementia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. And the issue of poverty in seniors is another major issue that's not being discussed in this election. So in this room, we have key questions that are being asked that should be on the national TV, in the media, and because these are conditions that are treating human beings in an inhumane way. And so your question of how to solve the problem, and both of these candidates have wonderful ideas, to solve the problem. I think we have a problem in Canada of governments that have in the past served the interests of corporations, and they don't allow the people to have a voice and a say, decision-making power. You don't get to decide. You get to decide once every 4 years, to come and speak your voice. So you best get together with the seniors and organize and fight for your rights.
Question. I'll answer that in a number of ways. First off, what the NDP is proposing is that is a green economy. With the green economy, there are going to be some job losses. However, we're proposing a 300,000 strong, I was going to say manpower, but no, person power job economy to offset the losses. That 300,000 person strong army will be retrained, and that's what's really important, to get people who are retrained with jobs that are applicable to the housing market. So I understand that people may come here from all places in the world. I came as an immigrant as well, and may not have the job qualifications or the job training involved in getting a Canadian job. However, I believe that the federal government has a direct responsibility to train and retrain our citizenry so that we can have citizens, immigrants, refugees who are available and applicable to the jobs that are available. For example, we have one of the highest immigrant rates right now of people with post-secondary and postgraduate, post-university, post-college graduate educations. Their qualifications are not being seen as relevant in Canada or as equal to Canadian colleges and universities.
Thank you, Ms. Augimeri.
Sorry.
To continue what she's saying, she's exactly right. We set immigrants up to fail a lot of the time. We say, come here, we have these great jobs, but then when you come here for these great jobs, we say, oh, the training from your country isn't valid in Canada, and for training here, it's $12,000. So what the Green Party wants to do, we want to offer free post-secondary education and wipe out student debt. So there should be no barriers to education. Learning and growing and passing forward knowledge is how we grow as a society. And no matter how much money you have, that shouldn't be a barrier, right? Everyone should be able to grow. Anybody in this room should be able to do what they want to, education-wise, to become a doctor, to become an engineer. And that's how we change that, because the economy is changing. Jobs are becoming more and more automated right now. There is a warehouse in Brampton that used to be case pick, and now it's strictly robot pick. So automated jobs are coming. We need better education for that. And on that note, the Greens, we have a plan to transition to a totally green, carbon-free economy or society, right? We're going to get off fossil fuels, and we need a lot of workers to do that. We need workers, engineers, things like that, to do these things. So we're talking millions of jobs over years, switching to a fossil-free society with free education.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. The issue of underemployment of workers and new immigrants is directly related to the fact that they are not respected for the qualifications that they have, and with retraining and bridging are still not allowed to have the jobs in the fields that they're knowledgeable about. So they end up working for temporary agencies in low-wage work without even the skills to do that work because they came here as professionals. So right now in our temp agency situation in this riding, there's 20 of them that service Fiera Foods, and there's 100 in the riding alone. These companies need to be shut down. They have no regulations. They have a pool of new immigrants that they exploit. And this is not being discussed in this election. It's being discussed here in this riding, thank goodness for that. So the question of underemployment, unemployment, the schemes that you're hearing about the green economy and that there'll be these new jobs, well, you can't have a retraining of the workers and they line up 100 for one job. So you have to have the jobs first so that the retraining just doesn't line up a bunch of workers that are going to get one job. So I think that these issues have to be spelt out and they have to be elaborated by these parties, or it's not going to help the underemployment and unemployment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to go over here.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Candidates, thank you for being here. So we found that the solution to gun violence offered by politicians has historically and continues to be more policing in the community. The City of Toronto just hired 200 police officers. However, youth have been having mixed relationships with the police. In our youth town hall, which happened about 2 weeks ago, police brutality came up as a key concern. A few months ago, a young 14-year-old boy from Shoreham was beaten down by 3 police officers, and no information has been given about why. My question to you is, what do you think is the root cause of gun violence in our community, and how would you address this and the issue of police brutality if elected to office? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The root cause of gun violence is poverty. That is the only cause of gun violence. That is the root cause. It's exemplified in this community in the housing that was built in the 60s and the 70s, that was built especially in order to segregate a certain portion of the community. It's exemplified in the employment rates in this community. It's exemplified in the fact that this community doesn't get its fair share of social and cultural resources from provincial, federal, and municipal governments. And it's always been a fight. It's like hitting your head against a brick wall when you want to do something in this community. I worked for 11 years to build a library, a little library at Jane and Shepherd. I had no one helping me to do that, and had to figure out the financing, and it took 11 years. It should not be that difficult. And yet, the youth readership in that community went up 76% 4 months after it was built. Things like that should be happening all the time. Kids turn, as you know, I don't have to tell you, kids turn to gun violence, kids turn to gangs to supplement families, to supplement friends, to supplement what they don't see at home and in the school system. The school system has to have resources in place to deal with that. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's bleeding dry. It doesn't have the resources that it needs. The federal and provincial and municipal governments don't give this community what it needs.
Thank you.
I'm going.
You go.
All right. So this question is best known by the community itself. And I know for a fact that this community has organizations that help families of youth that are murdered. And that organization doesn't get funded. And that's disgusting, that organization that's helping the families doesn't get, and there's youth entrepreneurs who have great ideas about how to develop small business. There's youth that have gone through the ranks and want to be mentors, and they have no funding to do this work, this very important work. All kinds of organizations exist. And I think that the discussion that's taking place here, now, by you, by your voices, by these questions, need to take place every month. There needs to be a town hall every month, and the politicians have to come here, and they have to be held accountable, whoever gets elected. So I recommend that a town hall take place in this riding every month, and that whoever represents this riding be part of the discussion, the voices, and the decision-making.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay. I couldn't have phrased what they said better. We all know that why gun violence is a problem in this area, and we all know what we could do to stop it. We don't need more police. We need better programs, better things for kids to do. And when it comes to police, we need better police. We need police that you're not afraid of, that people aren't afraid of. We need better trained police. We need community outreach members, people that you can be not afraid to go to, right? That's something the government has to work on, training police officers to work with the communities instead of just throwing more muscle at them. That's not how it's gonna work. But yeah, it's social programs and poverty, and that's what we need to do. Like things like basic income, housing, tuition. Like kids aren't picking up guns because they have stuff to do, right? They're picking them up because they're backed into a corner, they're scared, they have nothing else to do, right? And yeah, couldn't have said it better than them.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna go over on this side.
Hi, I actually have a quick public service announcement regarding some of the issues we're talking about and workers in our community. 2 weeks ago, a worker died at Fair of Foods, as was mentioned. There currently is an occupation at the Doug Ford constituency office demanding that Doug Ford sign legislation to protect that worker. Currently, the provincial government is not taking action in protecting workers. Too many workers are dying. Too many workers in our community are dying. So we are occupying Doug Ford's constituency office, 823 Albion Road. Currently, please join us, even if it's for 5 minutes or a few minutes if you can. We'll be there all night and for as long as it takes for the provincial government to sign the legislation to protect workers in our community. So this is run by Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty, Workers Action Center, and Fair Wages Now. Please come out and support. You can also sign the petition on 15 and Fairness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We also want our federal government to take action in putting these employers who are killing our workers, take responsibility, put those employers in jail, because they deserve to be in jail and take accountability for killing workers in our community.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Steven Rafael Gomez Salguero, also known as Heavy. I am, what up? I am an MC, an actor, a musician, and also an ambassador for the Toronto Epilepsy Organization. And what I'm going to ask is more of a personal question. And I know some of us have grown up in public housing and know about what's going on in the neighborhood, and some of us haven't. But outside of the elections, after, if you don't get elected or anything, how many of you guys will still reach out to programs and stuff like that? Because you guys have a platform, right? All of you guys. Also with Mr. Peruzzo over there too. Why not just come to the places and talk to them, educate people, right? It's not gonna cost anything. And I understand you guys go out to these events, when elections are coming, you host these events and you show face and everything. But, like I said, outside of that, you guys can make the difference. So what do you guys plan on doing? Programs get cut, funds will get cut, and you don't get elected. What's next after that? Are you guys still going to be willing to represent and hold down what's going on in this neighborhood?
Thank you.
Man, I'm so glad you asked that question. When I first got involved with the Green Party, I didn't get involved to do politics. I got involved because I wanted to do some community outreach work. I had a little bit of time on my hands. My daughter was getting too old to hang out with me, so the day after the election, I am probably going to show up here and talk to Butterfly and see if she has anything to help me that I can help out with. I'm gonna talk to Winston, Rose downstairs. I'm gonna go and see, like, now before I used to do all these like little side projects, you know, I like give out freezer pans for my work to the homeless. I do community things just on my own, right? This is just what I do. Like if I can help out, I can. But now I'm someone that's affiliated with someone, I'm a political entity. So now instead of just me doing my side thing, it's the Green Party and we're doing something. So I'm really looking forward to the day after the election, win or lose, because I'm gonna do some good. It's like a license to do good now.
License to do good. I like that, license to do good. Well, for the past 36 years, I've been appearing at schools, the elementary, middle schools, and high schools in the Downsview area, and speaking to young people and telling them about how a person who grew up in poverty can grow up to be a community leader. And I find that part of my work very rewarding. So I continue to do that. I continue to be an advocate for the environment and for public transit and for seniors. And I'm in this for the long run. I'm not only running this one time, I'm running again and again until people understand that they need real, concrete change in this community. So you won't see me disappear.
Thank you.
So at the beginning, I said that I've been doing this since 1974, and you know, it's my third time in the riding, but I've also been active in the injured worker community, and because of the fear of food deaths, wanted to make a national issue out of workers killed and maimed on the job, and that is going to be, you know, something that I will continue. What law that exists that Ford has not signed or put regulations out would hold this company responsible for these deaths? But federally, we have a law too that's not enforced, and that's if you kill a worker, you should be charged. Earlier, I called that a town hall of this kind of discussion with all these voices should be held monthly, and that your representatives should come here before they vote on anything and ask you what you think. So we do need decision-making in the hands of the people. How do we do that? You know, because right now, who decides? The corporations decide, the parties that support the corporations decide. But look at the voices in this room. It's impressive. And it needs to carry on in unity to fight for the rights, for the rights of all.
But also just, you know, talking about, you know, about being community leaders, but what about telling them about what it is about politics? Give them some other kind of education like that. Because a lot of people don't know about that. And since you guys have the platform, why don't you guys, you guys can speak about that. And it's really unfortunate that these two people aren't here, right? Like, and then people are gonna vote for them, but unfortunately, they're not here, and they need to be hearing everybody here because everyone has a voice. There's so many people here that have something to say, but they won't speak out. So, but yeah, that's what I gotta say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna go over here. I know we have 3 people over there. Just let me go to 1. Thank you. Thank you for being so patient, by the way. Thank you. Go ahead.
The Parliamentary Budget Office. The Parliamentary Budget Office recently said that 90% of the NDP promises would be difficult to deliver. How would an NDP government pay for free pharmacare, free dental care without raising taxes? Thank you.
We would use, instead of giving corporate giveaways to the tune of, what was it, $600 billion, we would use that money to pay for the services that real people need.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's-
Would you like to hear the question again?
No, because we're doing the same thing pretty much. We're doing pharmacare, and we're also doing tuition, right, which is expensive. CBC just released a report that they estimated $260 billion were just lost in some of the offshore accounts from Canadian businesses. That's enough to fund post-secondary education for all Canadians for over 20 years. And we just lost that money. Our government let that money go. So we need better transparency. We need a government that works for people. The fact that they're not here tonight is very upsetting. Right? This speaks volumes.
Thank you.
I think the question of governments worrying about debt and deficits, and you know that's what's driving everything. If they were here, they would talk about that. So I just want you to know that earlier I mentioned $26 billion in defense. Now, we don't need that much money to defend the country. Nobody's really attacking us right now. But we don't really need Navy ships more than we need, social programs. So the problem is that Canada doesn't have an anti-war government, doesn't have a government that doesn't interfere in the affairs of other countries. So therefore, they beef up, the billions into defense and at the expense of social programs. So that's just one example, and I'm sure there are others.
Thank you so much. We're going to go over here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dana. Quick question. What is your comment to investing in community infrastructure projects at existing and new community health centers across Canada in order to increase access for Canadians to service and support their needs in their local communities?
Thank you. I've always been a great supporter of community-based health, and I was one of the first actually supporters of the Black Creek Community Health Center at Jane and Wilson. I believe that community health is best delivered in our communities, and so I fought for that when the new hospital was envisaged on Wilson Avenue. I thought that it would be best to have something in the community, as well as having the monolith on Wilson. And so I'm working on a project now that would use the federal lands near Grand Ravine and Keele, and near Shepherd and Keele, to have community health, especially for seniors, delivered in conjunction with the hospital, but satellite centers for seniors on that site. Do I have time to talk about the new program? There's supposed to be a new program that's going to be released within the next 2 years, especially for seniors, so that if they're off-site, off the hospital grounds, they can still have their heart rate and their blood pressure monitored by anklets or bracelets. And it's a project that is only being done in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore now. So we're going to have that. So I'm a big supporter of that program and hope to see it off campus at Keele and Shepherd area too.
Community services are very important for every community, and it's simple as that. Governments need to invest in them to keep the communities thriving. To build a sense of community and to build a sense of safety, you need to have places where people can go and meet each other. So it's not just strangers walking by each other. Like rec centers, community health centers, places like that, where people can go and not have to pay to get into or wait to get into. They can just go to when they need to go to. Those are integral, and yeah, we definitely invest in those.
Thanks. Thank you for your question. There you go. I know I'm talking broadly about issues of social programs and stop paying the rich and stop giving handouts to corporations. We've heard, we all agree on this. So the power, people empowering themselves to ensure that the funding comes towards healthcare, because right now the direction is privatization. And all the communities are seeing that, well, if you want to go to a specialist, you have to pay extra, you know? So there isn't universal health care. You know, the trend is towards privatization. And so I think that, as I've mentioned, in terms of the voices of people and the demands, it's going to come from the grassroots, it's going to come from us. And so the pharmacare program that you're hearing about, which is good, having a national pharmacare, national dental program, but we also have to be interested in knowing whether pharmacare is going to make all the, who's going to make all the money on this? Is it going to be public or is it going to be private? So I think the issue of public always has, the discussion about public services always has to come out.
Thank you so much. We're going to go here and then come back to that side.
Oh, you're staying here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Do you support implementation of federal government strategies for community health centers as a high-impact way to further deliver on federal strategies in health, housing, immigration, and other sectors of the community across Canada?
Absolutely, yes, we do.
What did you say? Yes. Okay, yes. Yes. If I can elaborate a little bit, it all depends on what your priorities are as a government and as a party. The Liberal priority was to meet with big pharma and big insurance companies more than 700 times as lobbyists in the last government. The NDP would close the door to those lobbyists. Do you know that we pay, as Canadians, sometimes 100 times more for a drug than in places in other parts of the world? For example, drugs to treat hypertension or diabetes. It's absurd how much power Big Pharma has with this government, and how many corporations have seen their benefits triple and quadruple over the years because the Liberals have made it profitable to do so. And how many corporations have been gotten off the hook because Liberals see things that way. Protect Big Pharma, protect big insurance, at the cost of Denticare for a senior who can't afford teeth and goes to bed hungry because she can't chew. I mean, it gets that graphic, it really does. So yes, of course we support, I think all of us here support community-based health, and I wish that we were in government so that we could direct money directly at your dinner table, at your doctor's office, and at your dentist.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did you want to answer?
Ms. Nugent?
Nugent? Oh, you're good? Okay, all right. I will go over here. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, my name is Richard Digatano, and I'm a resident here. My question is, well, I'll start by saying some things first. Minimum wage is $15 an hour, which we haven't even gotten in Ontario, which we were supposed to get, is not a livable wage. In places like Toronto or Vancouver, you need well over $20 an hour just to really live. The unemployment insurance program is a scam. It's a ripoff of workers. There's billions of dollars in the reserve, and workers can't get money when they're unemployed. They lose their jobs. Social assistance is unlivable. People are trying to survive on amounts of money that are just won't be able to pay the rent and feed the kids and give them any clothing for the winter or anything like that. The Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security are inadequate. And what are your parties plan to do to make sure that everybody in this country, from children to seniors, has enough income to live a decent life?
All right, who would like to start first? Okay, go ahead. No?
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to try to give it a stab here. Immediately, our party would immediately put in place a universally qualifying threshold of 360 hours to make sure that more Canadians can access EI benefits. The appeal system has been gutted. We would immediately reinstate the appeal system with enough teeth to make it fair to Canadians. We would bring back the former extra 5 weeks pilot project that some of you may remember, and we would make it permanent. We would improve parental leave to make it more flexible. We would allow self-employed workers to opt in to the parental leave. We will double the leave for parents of multiple children and extend sickness benefits up to 50 weeks. Expand access to retraining. That's really important for people on EI and a lot of other people. We would protect the EI operating account in law so the future governments would not be able to raid it for general revenue. Less than 40% of the population who applies is qualified for EI. Oh, I'm sorry. Barry is telling me to wrap it up. Thank you, Barry.
The fact that the government makes it so painfully hard to get EI while we have billions of dollars in reserve just makes it painfully aware of whose best interests they have at heart. Like, when you lose your job, you pay into this for years and years of your life, and then something happens and you lose your job, or you change jobs, right? Like, and the fact that they don't make that you paid into, it's not fair. With the Green Party, we'd change that. We'd make EI accessible, easier to get, but we'd be working towards the guaranteed livable income. So that means even if you lost your job, you would be okay, right? You'd still have enough money to pay for your housing, you'd still have enough money to pay for your foods, and you'd have time to get an education, get a different job, a better job. Losing your job wouldn't be disaster on your entire life. It could be seen as a springboard, it could be seen as a change, because for some reason we have this idea that if we have a job, we have to work there for the rest of our lives. It's 60 years, 50 years in one place, when you don't have to, right? You can change, but we don't make it easier for you. So that's what we do. We'd have the guaranteed livable income. We'd make sure that EI was accessible for everyone, and we'd make it so it wasn't so impossible to get.
Where's the person who asked the question? Is he still here? Yes, there he is. Okay, hello, Richard. All of these programs that you mentioned have been either gutted provincially or federally, and it's under the past governments. So I really can't see anybody wanting to put those same governments in power. So I have to say that much. Although I'd like you to have heard them here, but they're not here, to have this important discussion, and the issue of, old age security, Canada Pension Plan, Ontario Works, Ontario Disability, the plight of the disabled workers, the role temp agencies play in undermining employment insurance, and anyone who works for a temp agency who comes and goes at their whim according to what schedules they want to give them affect the amount of hours they have in order to get employment insurance. And so the power is not in the hands of the people, even though all of the people in this room have wonderful questions, wonderful ideas, and great solutions to the problems. They're not talking about that in this federal election. It's a bit of a farce. So I thank you for the question, and I encourage you to continue these discussions and these organizations, and to call upon your elected official federally to show up here every month to have a town hall.
Thank you. I'm going to go over there. Go ahead, sir, with your question.
Yeah, my name is Eric Lee. My question is on the foreign policy. I'm not sure you're aware of the situation in Hong Kong. Like, there's a lot of police brutality, like the protesters, many students, like even high school students, are being murdered, like being suicide, like a lot of them. So the U.S. just passed a Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, basically to penalize all these government officials or police senior members, like to confiscate their properties in United States and don't allow them to and their family member to go to U.S. at all. So do you think something that could happen in Canada, that we can like pass something like that to protect the democracy development in Hong Kong? So basically, you are aware of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, like just passed in the U.S. It's yesterday, but it's only passed in the House of Commons. They still have to pass through the Senate, but like they already make it into the act right now.
All right, thank you, sir. Go ahead, candidates.
Thank you for your question, and it's a big question in terms of Canada's role in foreign policy. And it's also not being discussed in this election. There's a conspiracy of silence on discussing what role Canada is playing in the world. And then you have a minister who claims to be for human rights and the rule of law, Minister Freeland, but we know that they often want to appease the US. And I will get to your question of Hong Kong in a minute, but I would like to also talk about Venezuela and the role that Canada is playing in the Lima Group in interfering in the affairs of Venezuela. I don't think we should interfere in the affairs of other countries. I think that should be a principle of Canada, and that's not what these past governments have done. I don't think we need to have $26 billion in defense. And I think often when you look at the role the US plays in the world, they often will use human rights as an excuse in order to act as an imperialist country to control other countries.
But
and so China's a bit of a difficult question, because what role is US playing there?
Actually, there are 300 Canadians living in Hong Kong and working in Hong Kong right now. So basically, we try to protect our own citizens. It's not some foreigner that I'm trying to talk about.
Okay. I'm going to go over to the other two candidates. Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. Canada's foreign policy is a very serious topic, and thank you for asking it. People, we may be a small nation in international terms, but we've always been a very proud and very important nation when people look to us for civility. And that's what Canadians are known for. So when human rights abuses are involved, I expect Canadians and their government to stand up and make statements. So yes, sir, I do believe that your initial question about would it be possible for Canada to do that along the same lines as our American cousins, yes, I do believe that it would be possible.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you.
I believe that Canada is known for peacekeeping. We are a small player on the world stage, but a lot of people look to us as peacekeepers, as people who say moral guidance often. And I think although we're supposed to respect everyone's sovereignty, we have a moral obligation to let know that we support democracy, and we think that we should be clear, we should let it know that we support democracy. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. We support democracy, and can't leave much more than that. We just support democracy.
Thank you. I'm just going to go over here. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, so hi, so my name is Lisa, and I am a youth politician residing in the riding of Humber River-Black Creek. And I know this part has been covered partially, but I would like the candidates to go in depth with this question here. So, a post-secondary education is a minimum requirement for any job that pays a living wage. Today, high school students are faced with some of the highest tuition costs in the country. OSAP has been cut, with the grace period eliminated, which hurts low-income communities like Humber River-Black Creek, what are you going to do about the rising post-secondary costs?
Candidates?
I think it's important to recognize the fact that our millionaire prime minister made from $2 to $3 billion in interest on student loans in the last few years. That's unconscionable. We should not be making interest. We should not be making money from your debt. I would prefer that not only would we stop that right away, and an NDP government would, but I think that a more civil society should go towards free tuition. I mean, that's where they're headed in Europe, and it seems to me that a government can afford to train and to educate its youth and its workforce. You are our future. The more you are educated, the better our country will be.
Yeah, the Green Platform is free tuition and abolishing the student debt, because, like Maria said, the fact that we're making interest off of our students' debt that they shouldn't even have. An education is being had to make the country better, to make everything around you better. The more smart people you have in an area, the better that area is going to thrive, and it just propagates, right? The more students we have, the better labor there is, the more better infrastructure there is, the better the world's going to get, the more people that are educated. And with free education and free tuition, that's how we're going to do it.
Thank you.
They're playing games on us. You have to kind of wait. So there is a sentiment for free education in this country, post-secondary education. We hear it at all the meetings. It comes up all the time. So the question becomes, how's it going to get paid, right? So, and I've been raising the question of stop paying the rich, increase funding for social programs. So that's what we say. It's a slogan, but it means something in practical terms. So it means you don't give millions of dollar handout to corporations. Right now, the corporations kind of run our universities. There's an awful lot of connection between monopolies and corporations and universities. They don't really operate independently as democratic organizations that aren't controlled by big business. So that's a problem also. So the question of who decides these things, shouldn't be once every 4 years. As a youth politician, you shouldn't accept once every 4 years that your voice gets heard on a mic. So that has to change, how we decide things and how your voices are heard.
Thank you. I'm going to go over on the other side. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I belong to a tenant grassroots organization called the Shoreham Court Animators. I run an after-school program, and I currently have to look for funding in order to run that program. My question to each and every one of you is, what is your plan to help grassroots organizations sustain programs in communities that are plagued with violence?
Thank you. Shoreham Court, I visited it earlier. It's a fully TCH community, right? So I believe that in the interim, before we rebuild those communities, in the interim, your funding ought to be coming from TCH itself. I understand that they're cash-strapped, and I understand why. Because the governments in this country that should be paying for housing are not. It is unsustainable for a municipality to pay for public transit and public housing through the property tax, and that's what we're doing now. No city in the world can do this, and in Ontario we're the only ones. And it's the legacy of Mike Harris, which the Liberals did not correct. So I don't believe that you should go cap in hand to businesses in the area, which I believe you're doing now, to try to keep up with giving the kids school supplies and the backpacks and the snacks and all of that. We did our best at the city to serve these communities with the nutritional programs, and you got a bit of that in the past. And I think that unless the progressive conservatives in Ontario and the liberals in Ottawa are determined to make communities like yours fail, and I believe they are, because they are totally out of the housing market now, you will not stand a chance of being financially compensated for the work that you do. And you should be, by the right people. Barry's telling me to be quiet again. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Hi. Childcare is a huge issue in Canada. My life would be so different if I had better childcare. The Green Party, we want to do universal childcare. So to roll that out, we would have to work with everybody to make sure that everyone's getting funded, everyone's getting paid, from governments to daycares, right? Because with childcare, the sooner kids in childcare and socializing, the better they do, they thrive. It's an education system, it's a good start, right? So yeah, we'd be making it a funded program. We'd be having more outreach to fund childcare across the country.
Thank you.
And here we go. So we've had a lot of discussion about, how things are going to get funded. And when you have an organization, grassroots organizations, if they have to apply for funding, there's always strings attached. Like you can't be political, for example. So I'm sure there's many people in this room that belong to organizations that have to do funding proposals, and you're not allowed to be political. So that's the problem right from the get-go, because it's a political problem. So there's these strings attached to getting funding. So you're left going cap in hand, knocking on doors. So that's the way our system works right now. And all power to all of us who work in these, grassroots organizations fighting for people's rights, a lot of it with our own time. And we have to keep doing it until we can change the situation. And this political discussion is really, really important for that to take place. So don't give up advocating, organizing, and fighting for the rights of all. Because there's healthcare, childcare, all these, good paying jobs. They're all rights that people have. And so we have to carry on with that. And we have to hold them to account.
Even community centers, they're so small. This Deerfoot Community Center could never house the amount of children that are in this neighborhood. And it's not fair, it really isn't. And that's why grassroots organizations stepped up to the plate. Children are getting kicked out of daycare at 10 years old. And it's not because the spot isn't there. It's just that they got to keep moving the kids up right until they get out the door. I worked in a daycare. I worked in 2 daycares and saw the same thing happening all the time. So, what's the answer? Is the answer more daycares to solve the issues? Somebody needs to do something to house these children. Whether it be bigger community spaces or grassroots organizations, somebody needs to help and do something. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Tamara. I'm a resident, and I work in the community, and I'm the resident co-chair of the Economic Opportunities Action Group. And my question is, since Ford scrapped $15 an hour in Ontario, what is your party's plan for a guaranteed income?
Go ahead, candidates.
We're going to bring it back up to 15.
Sorry, one moment. Sorry, there's a ton of noise in the back. Can you folks keep it down, please? We just want to have the opportunity for everyone to hear the questions and the answers. Thank you. Go ahead.
We're going to keep it at 15, and we're going to have the guaranteed livable income, which puts a guaranteed monthly income every month.
Thank you. The New Deal for People that I referred to before that an NDP government would institute would boost wages, of course, but immediately the federal wage would go up to 15, and a living wage by 2023, so it would be incrementally increased. We would ensure that precarious workers are treated equally so that the corporations cannot exploit them. We would improve services with affordable childcare attached to it, universal pharmacare, and create 500,000 units of affordable housing in the first 4 years. So that's 500,000 units. I think that job creation, like the Liberals like to boast about job creation, and the job creation, the bulk of it that's been created over the last 4 years has been in the public service. And it hasn't been by economic renewal. So I don't know what they're boasting about. I think that economic renewal is the way to go. I think that with the advent of the Finch LRT here, you'll see a lot of businesses improving over the long term. And it will act as an economic stimulus to the community. I think that you'll see better streetscape, better jobs, improvement in jobs, and the local economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Troy, the microphone.
Okay, microphone. So there's a lot of discussion about the guaranteed income, the basic guarantee. You know, so we've heard it a few times tonight, and so it needs to be discussed and looked at. You know, so what does it mean? So one question that does come up from the anti-poverty organizations is, do we trust government to bring in such a program and then wipe out all our other social programs? You know, will we still have EI? Will we still have, you know, ODSP for disabled people? You know, so it's put in the wrong hands. That program is an opportunity for the governments that represent the rich to undermine social programs and hand out funds to corporations to create jobs which never trickle down to you and I, right? So I think we need to have more discussion on this, and I think it has to come from the people themselves so that economic development doesn't take place at the expense, you know, of social programs.
Thank you. Just keep your microphones on.
Yeah, leave it on forever.
Yes, just keep it on and just put it down. Thank you. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, my name is Phyllis, and I'm a resident in this riding. So my question to the representatives, thank you also for coming out, has to do with inclusion issues, so inclusion and employment. We still have a problem as Canadians of talking about issues of racism and discrimination in the workforce. And unfortunately, we keep saying that education is the great equalizer, but it's very important, as one young sister here said, that it's post-secondary education is now the minimum in order to get a decent job. But unfortunately, education isn't the equalizer for people who are racialized and for women. And especially, my primary concern right now is the anti-Black racism in the workforce, because there are many Black people who have high levels of education but just cannot get decent work, or they're underemployed, things of that nature. So my question to the parties here is, what strategies would you put in place to combat the discrimination that still exists at the federal level? Because this is federal, this is not provincial, that's for somebody else. So, but at the federal level, what strategies would you put in place to combat or at least alleviate some of these real problems? Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Go ahead.
Thank you for asking the question, Phyllis. As you know, I don't have to tell you, racism is insidious, and it's in every institution that we have. It's in the school system. It's in universities. It's in colleges. It's in our hospitals. It's in every service sector. I mean, you encounter it every day, I'm sure. As a white person, I'm very privileged. And I understand that I'm privileged. And I understand that I have a long way to go and a lot to learn. I don't pretend to have the answers for you. But I've been fighting racism, my whole family has, all of our lives. We fight because we believe that all people are equal and all people are created equal. I also don't believe that children are born racist. I believe that racism is taught. And it's taught in the school system. And it's taught by families. I think that it's very difficult to overturn mindsets, but we have to. We have no other choice. I agree with you that there are imperfect ways right now of fighting racism. The onus is on you to prove it in the workplace. And the onus is high. But we will keep trying.
Thank you.
Racism is upsetting. It's I speak to some of my friends about racism at work, and well, even hitting doors, because there was a big scandal and that was a big topic, and everyone was asking about that. And visible minorities that I didn't know said they were okay with it. They didn't see a lot of problems with it, most of it. Some of my closer friends that were visible minorities, it was about 50-50. Some said they were okay with it. Some said they weren't okay with it, but they didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to be that guy. And that bugged me, right? Like, that bugged me. To think that that's where we're at, where people who can't display how they feel about certain things because they don't want to be deemed as calling racism. You should be proud to call racism. If you see something racist, you should stand up and call it. Everyone should, and that should be the kind of mentality we approach, and that's the kind of mentality our government should approach, our schools should approach, our jobs should approach, everyone should approach that mentality, and when someone doesn't approach it with that mentality, they should be called out flat out.
Remember to keep them on.
In Canada is a long history of oppression of people in different marginalized communities. So, you know, we had it with Indigenous people for years. The workplace divided on the basis of race is in the interests of the owners of that workplace. If you're united for your rights, for wages, working conditions, a living wage, benefits, if you get a union, you can't do that without being united. And so the conditions of workers in this country improve when people collectively fight for their rights, because otherwise division in the workplace is in the interest of the employer who seeks maximum profit. And so it's in the interest of employers and any governments that operate in their interests to have divisions in society on these bases. And so I would say that we have to unite to fight for our rights to housing, healthcare, you know, living wages. And in the course of that fight, we will unite and oppose division.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a quick announcement, but before I do, I just want to let the candidates think about this question. It's around environment, since we haven't talked much around environment. Yes, so if you can think about it while I make the quick announcement, go ahead, and then you each can have a minute and a half to answer the question. So everyone, there's a few people who are going around with the mock voting. So in the beginning, we asked people to vote on who they think they would vote for before coming into the town hall. So now we're doing an exit ballot, just to see if people still remain the same in their beliefs and the information that they know about their candidates. So it's a mock ballot. It is anonymous. We don't know your information. You're just picking something and just dropping it in. So that's what it's about. Secondly, we'll be posting it on social media what the majority of the votes were. And if you want to know, you can sign up via email your email address, or during community events for people who don't have emails or access to a computer, that we can share this information through different community events. So we'll be sharing that information. All right, thank you. So back to the question around environment. We've been hearing there's been a lot of demonstration and protests around climate change. And I just wanted to see, at a federal level, candidates, what is your platform or policies around environmental issues?
Thank you. The New Deal that I spoke of, the NDP's New Deal, has a climate change component that is very strong. We would create, as I said before, 300,000 new jobs and invest in clean energy projects with a climate bank. The part of the New Deal that interests me so much as former chair of the TTC is that we would electrify all vehicles, all public vehicles, so that the buses, etc., that throughout the cities in Canada would be electrified. That means that they would not rely on fossil fuels to carry people around. And I believe that I'm safe in saying that we would work towards a free transit system. Can you imagine what it would be like on the streets of Toronto if people didn't drive anymore and took TTC and took transit to work and to school? I guarantee you that we would be breathing better. Finally, you can't be a prime minister who says we care about climate change one day and the next day buy a $4.5 billion pipeline. That is hypocrisy at its best.
Go ahead.
Well, everybody knows the Greens have the most comprehensive plan for the climate crisis. We have the only plan that actually meets the IPCC international standards to get us down to our carbon footprint so we don't go above the 1.5 degrees. But we're going to do that in a way that's just. We're going to make sure that the oil and gas workers that have brought us here, that gave us this fuel economy, they're transitioned into the green economy. So, excuse me. When we put up all these solar panels, when we put up all these wind turbines, when we shut down all these oil mines, it's going to be the workers that work there that did that. So they're not going to be losing their jobs. There's over 100,000 employees in the fossil fuel industry, and we're going to move them into the green energy industry where there's already 300,000 people. So we're going to switch from fossil fuels to no fossil fuels, quick and easy, well, not quick and easy, with workers while creating jobs, just like that.
Thank you. Don't turn it off.
Okay. So the question of the youth in the world and the youth in Canada marching with their placards and their posters and their banners. If you read those placards and posters and banners, you'll get a good idea what's on their mind. And their voices are the voices that are coming forward. So in terms of the green economy itself, if we still have the problem of corporations maximizing their profits in the course of developing that green economy, it's not going to result in the society that we want. So I'd just like to say that the most important thing we can do right now on this issue of the environment is to honor the decisions of the Indigenous communities in this country. The Indigenous communities have a right to consultation and consent. That's the first thing that has to take place in this country. Without that, we're not going to have an environmental solution. Secondly, all the parties are talking about the green economy, but concrete projects have not come forward. I heard tonight about the TTC, that's great to hear. Concrete projects like how come we can't make public General Motors and build our own electric vehicles for Canada Post right across the country. That's a project, it's a nation-building project. We can do that. So that's the kind of thing I think we have to have more discussion on. Wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go ahead over there with your question. Go ahead. Thank you.
I wasn't going to speak because I'm not a good public speaker. But when I heard the lady came up today, she's a resident. She has children. She sacrificed her time to solve problems such as gun violence, poverty, community cohesion, and you guys basically just looked her over. Tell me which one of you are going to sacrifice your time to give up some of your funding to some of the programs in the community. None of you. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. There's things that happen in the community. People like them are not afraid to walk night and day, to go and talk to parents, to go and help support the community. A lot of you don't even want to walk in the daytime, much more nighttime. The people in the community are trying to solve problems. How can you support this lady who's sacrificing herself, her family, to support the children in the community? She asked a question. How can they get funding? I myself sacrificed myself. I don't live in the community. I have no kids in this community. But I'm here every day to ensure that these kids have a safe space to come to. They have education. There's somebody supporting them in terms of their education, because we know the school system is failing. We talk about privatization. That's one of the way things are going to go. How can you, as a leader, support these grassroots community or these grassroots tenants to move ahead and support the young people in the community? So gun violence is not there, poverty is not there, and also a better education system. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Thank you. Go ahead, candidates.
So a little bit about me. I got into this, when I got into this, the Greens were polling at 1%. So I knew the odds of me winning this and leaving with a nice, cushy MP job are very slim. And I've spent hours and hours going around talking to people in the community, saying what I think can make the community better, and reaching out to the grassroots organizations, seeing how I can help them and what I can do for them. And once I'm done with this, now I am a grassroots organization, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to take it into the community, and I'm going to go around and volunteer my time like I have been doing, just because that's what I want to do, and that's how we're going to make this community better, because it's a beautiful community and it's got a bad stigma, and that's just the way it is, and we can make it better if we all work together towards it.
Thank you. Don't turn off the mic, please.
Ma'am, I'm very sorry if you took anything that we said as a slight against the woman who came up and spoke. I think that I can speak for all of us when I say that we have nothing but respect for her. So we did not mean anything negative at all. When she spoke, I answered her questions about how to get the money, and I replied that it should be TCH that should be funding. And I explained the situation as it is now, that it's bankrupt, and we are closing housing units, and there's no way she can get that money from TCH unless we pull together and advocate, because the system is broken. The system has no money coming from either the provincial or federal governments. And so we need to elect a federal and provincial government that will give the money to do that.
And you can guarantee this, Ms. Augimeri, because you were in power before.
Say it again, please.
You can guarantee this when you get in power, that you're going to find resources to support some of these grassroots organizations and keep them going, because our youth are being extinct.
Because our youth are?
Our youth are being extinct because of this gun violence. There's lack of
I
funding,
agree.
there's poverty, there's lack of education. So what are you going to do when you get into power?
As I said, if I'm allowed to answer.
Go ahead.
As
You
I
have
said
30
before,
seconds.
I don't believe that the governments who have been in power, the Liberals and the Conservatives, have done much for this community. And I think that by your questions, you agree. I believe that an NDP government would change the way funding and the way priorities are made in this country. I believe that an NDP government wouldn't tolerate racism and racialized communities. I don't believe that an NDP government would tolerate housing the way it is now.
But I don't think a ballot box should change that. I think people should come together to care about people, not because it's not your child, but to care about other people's children, to care about this community, whether you're elected or not. It shouldn't be based on a ballot box. I'm just saying.
You have such power at the ballot box. You have such power. Barry Reeder organized a tenant all candidates debate one year. And I think I was the only candidate who showed up out of about 15 candidates. Do you know what he did then? He organized the community because it was such a slap in the face that no one came but one candidate. And do you know that that community turned a 3% turnout into an over 50% turnout? And nobody ignored them again. So you're right. You're right. You have the power, but it's at the ballot box.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think having a ballot once every 4 years is not power. So I think the problem is that we have to empower ourselves to fight for our rights. And we have to organize to do that. And that's, what you're doing. That's what the questions here are all about. And I don't think we can stop doing that and go to sleep and hope, that the powers that be are going to come through. Because then we're not going to win. So our party says empower yourself, fight for your rights, stop paying the rich, increase funding for social programs. I encourage you to look at our material. I have some out there, our website, and you will see that this discussion that's going on here is the best thing that has ever happened in this election.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir, with your question. Thank you for your question also.
First of all, I want to thank the General Finch Task Force. I want to thank the people here. I also want to thank your gate. My name is Kenny from GBKMFM. I have 3 questions in one. First of all, it's all rosy and all beautiful that we are going to be having a streetcar. What are we going to do to avoid the mess, just like the mess we have in St. Clair? Number 1, the traffic. Number 1. Number 2, what are we going to do to encourage people to be employers? And if we do want to encourage people, how are we going to get around it? Number 3, how do we encourage people that already own business to stay in business? And if we do want to encourage them, what will be the incentives? Thank you.
In business along Finch?
You know what? One moment. If you can ask the questions let me ask the questions one at a time, and we'll let them answer it in a minute, and then you go with your second question, and then your third. Okay, we still have a little bit of time, so I can give you that time.
Okay, thank you.
So ask your first question, and
The
I'll
first
let them ask
question
them.
is the LIT that is coming. We do understand that it's beautiful, it's nice, it's fast. It avoids a lot of people traveling time and stuff like that. We currently also see a lot of disaster in St. Clair. That when one car stops, you stop for 40 minutes. There is parking issue in St. Clair. Bringing that to my neighborhood, how are we going to avoid that?
I think that it's important to learn from the Eglinton example. The Eglinton example saw many businesses on the verge of closing. You're right, sir. You're right. And we need to work with Metrolinx, which is the agency that is delivering the LRT, to make sure that the troubles are minimized as much as possible. But you're right, the people who have businesses along the strip will feel it. I understand that there's a program that has been worked on at Eglinton that perhaps we could modify for Finch to help give some financial relief to the purveyors of the businesses along Finch.
I also agree. I think the way they're doing the Eglinton line is taking forever. The way the construction is taking forever. It's just the way they're doing construction is taking forever, and I'm worried about the same things you are. When I had a store on Lakeshore, and when they did the sidewalks and streetcar there, my business plummeted. It was very bad. So I think the government should look in at helping out businesses during the transition period. Of course, it's mandatory because what's the point of having an LRT if there's no businesses there, right? I think we should really look at putting a time limit on this thing. The Union Station has been under construction for 60, 70 years now. Like, it's getting ridiculous. We got to put a time limit so we don't have Finch shut down with construction for 12, 15 years like Eglinton has been, right?
Hi, I'd just like to raise the issue of who decides these things, right? Like that small business are affected, that, you know, where subways goes, where LRTs goes, and the developers have a lot of power. Developers have a lot of power in the decision making. So once again, it isn't the businesses that have the power along the way, it isn't the workers that produce, you know, the transit, it's the developers and the political parties that serve their interests that make the decisions. So decision-making power is something that needs to be discussed, not just now, but going forward.
Okay, that takes me to my second question. How are you going to encourage small business to stay in business? And if you intend to encourage them, what are the incentives?
Do you need me to clarify the question?
No? Okay. You start? Okay. Basically, we'll just start with better taxation. The way taxation is worked out right now, the businesses that are making the most money, the most billions and billions of dollars, are paying the least taxes, while mom and pop businesses are going under because they're being charged taxes on everything from the Interact machine they're renting to their hydro, right? Like, when you have a business, everything is an expense, right? And the government doesn't help with that. So we do work on fair taxation. So if your business isn't doing that great, you don't pay that much taxes. If your business is doing billions of dollars, you're going to be paying lots of taxes. Fair taxation and education, that's how everything's going to roll out.
Sir, did you want an answer based only on Finch?
That would be even good.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, I would learn from the Eglinton example and tweak it to make sure that you're satisfied. But sir, you're not going to be satisfied, 100% satisfied. I urge you to try to get the best deal you can with Metrolinx. I understand that your local councillor and your MPP are working with Metrolinx now. I urge you to form some sort of a business association that would, I think you're part of one already, is that right? Okay, so your business association should be leading the fight with Metrolinx to ensure that you get adequate compensation and protection.
My last question is, a lot of businesses open, statistically speaking, and most especially small businesses, and you see them close down the next day. What are we going to do to encourage people to be employed so that they can have business? And what are we going to do, in other words, I asked before, to sustain them in business? Because it's easy to open, and it's much harder to stay open. What will you do?
I can give you one idea that I had, and it's just a step in the right direction, and that's increase the relevance of a BIA. I believe that in the area we have 2 BIAs now, and both of them seem to be working really well. But I think that the mandates of the BIAs could be enlarged to actually apply for grants to help small business. They have grants available to them now that have to do with the way it looks, the facade grant, for example, and the cleanup grants. But you don't have money right now to actually help a small business get up on its feet. So I believe that changing legislation to permit that would be a step in a good direction.
Go ahead.
I think that a lot of people that are on employment insurance are encouraged to start businesses, and in many cases, in order to keep an income, you have to start a business because the employment insurance doesn't last long enough for people to survive. So that's one thing that's going on. So the competition to have a business is related to employment insurance, giving people money so they can live a bit longer if they start a business, whether or not that's going to work or not. If you had good paying jobs, if you didn't have temp agencies, but you had employers that had to pay good living wage, less people would go and start businesses. They would be satisfied with having, wages with good working conditions and benefits. And so that is another avenue for people to survive. And I think that's what workers have to organize to get that.
Thank you.
Like Maria said, grants, bursaries, subsidies to help businesses get out the street. When I did start my store, the government was a little bit helpful with me. They could have been a lot more helpful with me. So things like that. We would also have to look at is not housing, but space for stores. I know that if one of my friends' businesses that was doing really good, and their landlord saw that it was doing really good, and they just doubled the rent. And there was nothing they could do about that. There was no cap on retail rent for my friend. So we need to legislate things like that too. We'd have to put better legislation in effect to protect small business owners from things like that, or from things like an LRT being built through.
Yeah, but I was hoping to hear something like a break in the rent. A lot of people, businesses, I'm a business owner too. A lot of businesses have issues with paying the overhead, paying the rent. Most businesses, if you research properly, you will understand that they shut down because they couldn't meet up to their rent. Sometimes it's just them working alone, so they don't have the problem of paying somebody, but they do have the problem of paying the rent for some time. Knowing a business that's just starting, you will expect them to strive for a bit before they get themselves on the floor, get their foot on the floor. I will expect one of you to address that, how to tackle those preliminary issues that this business may be facing. Thank you.
The rent could be part of the partnership that you form with Metrolinx. You could put that on the table. Okay?
Any other candidates wanted to answer quickly? No? Okay. All right. I'm going to wrap up. Does anyone have any other question? If you have a question, just please come on up to the mic, please. If you have, come on up to the mic just so that everyone can hear you, please. Thank you.
Panel, good evening. Maria, it's good to see you. You've done a lot of work in this community over the years. I am very concerned that we still don't have a lot of black people in that parliament of ours. I need to see more of them coming out here and running for office. But having said that, Jane Finch is going through a dramatic change. Jane Finch is now the new hub, the dynamic new hub of the northwest corner of this city. And so whoever's going to be in office, whoever is going to be elected, has a significant responsibility to this community. I want to tell you, and in the frame of a question, we'll get the question out of it. We currently have a lot of migrating peoples, asylum seekers in this community and in Toronto. And many of them, particularly the ones that we just formed a group called Tomogo in April, and we have over 153 families that are now registered with us. And most of them are Nigerians, and they're being turfed out of this country in large numbers. There's no equitability in the justice system in that the representation, whether by means of legal aid, has been cut back. And further to that, all of the immigration, not the officials, but the consultants, lawyers, have been ripping them off, vulnerable people. And they come to us, we have them here, we're based in the mall right now, we're dealing with that issue. So I want to know what you're going to do about that. My next question is around the violence issue. And I hear all this talk about gun violence. And it's not about gun violence, it's about violence, period. A lot of our people are being stabbed. There are more stabbings now than guns. So their knives, their guns, their violence, their cars running down people, and nothing is changing. The money is being given to the police, we're getting more police officers, and no change. We want to know what's going to be in the federal programs that will help to bring about that capacity building change in the Jane Finch, now that we have all the infrastructural opportunities in building them. a lot of new transit systems. Jane Finch is becoming a new center for tourism. So I want to know, if we elect someone, what you're going to do to help us make that change to give back to this community. Thank you.
Go ahead, candidates. Who?
Thank you, Winston, and it's really good to see you again. Are you still dealing with the sewing workshop? Yeah, good, good. I have a bag of thread for you. And thank you for the good work that you do in this community. Your questions are important, and you're right on the money. Jane Finch has become a hub, and it's getting a new hub on Finch Avenue. And that's because of the community pressure, the grassroots pressure that the community has put onto Metrolinx. So good for the people in this community who fought for it. As you know, I've been a community activist all my life. And Jane Finch has always been really important to me. And when I represented the area, I didn't say, when people ask me, where do you represent? I didn't say York University, I said Jane Finch, because I was that proud, and I still am. I see a lot of talent in the schools in the area. I see a lot of kids with bright faces and forward-looking minds and a lot of dreams. So they don't turn to guns and knives. They don't turn to violence easily. Society does that to them. So I think you missed the first part of the meeting when I said that the issue here, a huge part of the issue, almost 100%, involves housing, and how housing was made into a very racialized, segregated system. And that is the fault of planners of long ago. And we haven't been able to get a government in power to undo the housing crisis. And the tenacity of the people who fight back, of the tenants, is to their credit. So I would be part of the force, just as I was when I represented this community. Nothing in me has changed. The dreams are still there, and the fire to represent this community the best possible way I can.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I agree with a lot of that Maria said. Most of the violence in this community is because of poverty, housing, things like that. I'd propose a citizens' assembly, because the disconnect between Parliament and the people of this community is so vast, it's appalling. To have our primary candidate, or like the incumbent, not even dignify us with to show up, it shows just a degree of disrespect, right? And to have that coming from our government to us during an election period of all times, with everything that's going on right now, I think shows that they're not paying attention to us. And because I'm from here, like Maria, we're from here, we have to connect. I shop at Shoppers Drug Mart. I'm at this mall all the time, right? This is where I'm from. Like, these are my people. This is who we are. And I'd represent that. I'd take that to there and say, the way we're doing things here is wrong. And this is a citizens' assembly saying what we need to do, because these are the people that are experienced in that area, that know what's going on, that know what needs to be done. The government thinks that a $35,000 in income is enough to raise a family on and pay back your student loan, when it's not. It's barely enough to get by. You need $70,000 just to make it by in Toronto. So the disconnect is massive, and that's what I'd work on.
Thank you. Go ahead.
It's good to meet you, Mr. Jane Finch. I don't think we have democracy going on here, so we need democratic renewal. And I don't think the political parties have the solution to the problem. I think you do. I think you have vast experience in the community. And I think the people in this room that have spoken out have all kinds of solutions to the problems. They don't have power. So we have to empower ourselves. We have to seek to get that power and that decision-making, and I'm sure you know a lot about that. And I don't think there's any quick way to get through it all. So the asylum seekers need power, the small business need power, the working class needs power. And that has to take place at the grassroots through organizations. And there's just no way that these political parties that represent monopolies and oligopolies and worldwide companies are going to do it for us.
Thank you.
I just have a follow-up to that. So which one of the candidates, it's a pity that Judy isn't here tonight, so which one of the candidates is prepared to grant an amnesty to all of these migrant people who are professionally qualified, bring a lot of skill sets? They're sitting here with idle talent, many of them working as PSWs. So why don't we just grant an amnesty, particularly to the black ones? Because we allowed Vietnamese in, we allowed Sri Lankans in, we allowed the Vietnamese in, and over the years we've been very generous. So why don't we do a good turn? All of these Africans settled in Europe, they're drowning in the Mediterranean. Canada's border stretching across the United States. Mr. Trump is forcing them into this country, and we're sending them back to their countries. So let's hear how many of you might consider amnesty to be a good idea that we might do.
I'm going to give 30 seconds just because there is somebody else who would like to ask a question. So if any candidates would like to.
I think Canada is a welcoming country, and it's our moral obligation. We have so much land, we have so much opportunity. We should welcome as many people in as we can.
Without immigration, Winston, I wouldn't be here. I'm an immigrant to this country. I believe immigration is the backbone of Canada. And in fact, all of us except our Indigenous people are immigrants. As for refugees, we haven't hit the nail on the head when it comes to the refugees of the future, and they're going to be the climate change refugees. We're going to get people, millions of people, dehoused because of climate change. They have to go somewhere. The world has to prepare for that too.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to go to the last question. If you can just come up to the mic.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jesse George, urban planner, community activist. I'm not a resident of this community. Let that be known at the beginning of my question. But I do deeply care about the issues of this city and the things that do happen. I reside downtown, but I've done quite an extensive amount of work throughout the city in communities like these as well. What I want to ask, or more so, I guess, kind of make known, is that issues that happen in communities like Jane and Finch are, very stigmatized. They're very one-sided. They're very one-wayed. And I feel like the residents here know that that is a fallacy. It's not true based on the actual things that happen here every day. And so here in this, federal debate, federal election, I implore, I encourage, I want to, really encourage and just hope that whoever is elected, or even if you're not, I see the candidates here, you seem to be, residents of this community. Mrs. Augimeri, I'm familiar with your work on city council. Good to see you running for, a federal seat now. And, whether the incumbent wins or not, I think it's a priority of not just you, but, the community members as well, to make the matters of Jane and Finch known on a federal level. For too long, it's a municipal issue. They say the crime, the violence, the infrastructure, it gets lost in city talk, right? But on a federal level, I've never really been to Parliament to hear any member from this community speak, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, but it's on a higher plateau. And when it's on a higher plateau, you have the potential to impact, in my opinion, bigger change, bigger things from the infrastructure, from the housing that you mentioned before, from so many things that have plagued this community, but, it still shines, it's still resilient, it's still brilliant from what I see. And these are my eyes, these are my lenses. Now, what other people see is different, right? All I can do is speak for myself. But, regardless of however this election turns out, I really, really encourage you to, reach and do more for this community on a federal level so that somehow the infrastructure and the investments that can come from things like, extending the subway, all the way to Vaughan. I know that was federal money behind it. So things like those, right? Maybe it's a federal investment that could fix things like housing, like small business investment, like all these type of things that can, make this community shine like the resilient, beautiful place that it is.
Definitely.
And that's what I really want to see going forward after the federal election.
Definitely. Thank you, brother.
Mr. George, is it? Mr. George, thank you. And I really would like to sit down with you at some point and go over the planning element of how our community was designed. I could learn a lot from you. First of all, it wasn't only federal money that brought the subway up.
True.
Okay? It was three governments shared in it. It was local, it was provincial, and it was federal. And the 905 played its part too in giving some for the bus base. In addition, you are quite right. We are part of the community, and my work speaks for itself. My work on anti-racism and housing and the violence portfolio, I'm very proud of. And I'm very proud of having been an advocate of this community. Lastly, about speaking up, I don't think you could shut me up about this community. And no one has been able to shut me up for 35 years, and no one will. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, we're just down to 1 minute. Sorry about that, okay? So 1 minute.
I appreciate your view of this community too. I live here and I love it here. Jane and Finch is known coast to coast. Everyone knows about Jane and Finch in Toronto, and unfortunately they know the wrong things about Jane and Finch, but we can use that for our advantage. If we were to stage a massive rally at Jane and Finch Mall, right, a huge one, the country would notice. So we need to get out there. We need to be loud. So this is my first time running for office. I'm totally new to politics, all this. And so keep an eye out for me in the community, because that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be advocating loud for this community. I'm going to be in the city. I'm going to be street level, probably. Yeah, you'll see me working around, making as much noise about this community and how it needs to be sustained, because this is a hub of Canada. This is the most diverse community in the most diverse city of the most diverse country on the planet, and it's something to be really proud of. Right. And we should be celebrating that instead of worrying about violence and preaching that. This should be a nationally celebrated community.
Thank you so much.
If you can quickly go. Yes.
Throughout this evening, I've been saying that it's the organizations on the ground that are making the difference and will continue to make the difference, and that it isn't going to be political parties that are going to make the difference. We're in a new age now where people have to be empowered, organize, and grab decision-making so that the powers that be do not have control over how things develop in society.
Well, I would hope so. I would hope so.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm just going to give the brother here one last, if you can make your question very clear and straight to the point, and then we would just give you guys just 30 seconds for some final remarks. We know we're a bit over time. Thank you so much.
Just quickly to summarize the meeting, could you please, as elected official for our community, what exactly are you going to do to make sure any of the economic plans federally benefits this particular community? So quickly tell us how you will advocate for this community to benefit from any economic development.
Thank you so much.
Everything I do to advocate is going to be was sprouted here. All my ideas to fight homelessness, to fight poverty, to fight to prevent hunger were sprouted here. So when I say guaranteed livable income, right, I'm thinking of the people in this community first. Right, when I'm saying first school, I'm thinking of my friends that I grew up with in this community first. Right, so everything I'm going to do, from the income to tuition to better social programs to housing, it's going to be with this community in mind first, like groundbreaking here first.
Thank you.
I just like to tell you that when you talk about the economy, workers are part of the economy, not just business, right? And so I came into this election on the issue of workers getting killed, and across this country, thousands of workers get killed and maimed on the job. And so the question of the economy has to be looked at from the view of workers and their right to health and safe work conditions, and that they not get killed on a job. So that's been my interest in entering into this election and this riding.
Thank you so much. Can we give a hand of applause?
Wait a minute.
I forgot you, sorry.
Okay.
30 seconds.
See,
Thanks.
I told you you can't make me be quiet. Okay, so the first thing and the most important thing is to revitalize the housing communities in this neighborhood. So that needs serious federal funding, and only the federal government can come in and do the job that it was elected to do, and that is build quality, affordable civic housing, which it hasn't done here. So, you know, we have to do that first, and most importantly. Thank you. Now you can.
Thank you so much. So again, quick info from Jane Finch Action Against Poverty. The sit-in at Doug Ford's office is still happening, so folks are able to go and join. That'll be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you so much to our candidate. Thank you so much to everyone. If you have not voted, because the whole point of doing the mock voting is you vote before and then you vote after to see if anything that was shared to here today changes your mind in terms of who you would like to vote for. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah,